Hey, I hope you're having a great day. I'm Lindsay from Garden Hands, and today we're going to be talking about propagating dahlias, which is one of the things you can do with your dahlia tubers before you're able to put them into the ground. Here in Zone 4B, we're in Wisconsin, and it's still crummy outside. Hopefully, we're getting close to being able to go outside with some of our stuff, but we're still kind of stuck inside. And one of the things that I have been doing the past couple weeks is potting up some of my dahlia tubers. And what this means is taking your tuber, putting it in some soil, covering it up, and letting it get a little bit of a head start before I can put it outside. This, in theory, will give me a couple weeks head start on the growing season, and given how this year is going, I might need it up here. With dahlia tubers, whether they are ones that you have successfully overwintered, which is not mine, or you have ordered some, you will either get a single tuber, and they come in so many different shapes and sizes. Or you might get a clump. I don't know if I'd consider this a clump, there's only two, but sometimes you'll get multiple tubers on your clump, and you can do several things with them. You can keep them tucked away until you are ready to get them out into the ground. You'll probably want to keep them in the storing medium that they arrived in if you ordered them, or if you've been overwintering them, just keep them in their overwintering material until you're ready to plant them outside. Another thing you can do is pot them up, which means that you are going to fill probably a bigger container than this, but in theory you're going to put some soil into the bottom of your container. You will put your tuber in there sideways with the eyes facing up if you know where they are. They'll be here on the end of the neck, and then you'll cover it with several more inches of soil. If you're going to go the route of potting up your tubers, you want to make sure that your soil does not have too much water in it, at least until you see green leafy growth emerge from the soil. Tubers are similar to potatoes in that they are pretty susceptible to rot if they have too much moisture in them. So I would err on the side of being too dry versus adding too much moisture too soon. And finally, you can propagate your tubers. So dahlias are kind of neat in that if you grow a beautiful dahlia during the year, you're not going to want to save the seeds from that dahlia because the seeds are not true to what you see on the plant. You could end up with any kaleidoscope of color or height or width or growing structure. It could be single or double blooms. You really have no idea what you're getting when you plant dahlia seeds. However, if you would like to keep the plant that you have, if you really love that dahlia that you grew, you could take a cutting and you could pot it up, or you can save the tubers. The cuttings and the tubers will give you a plant true to what you loved in your garden. And so that's what we're going to do today. We're going to work on propagating or starting to propagate some of the tubers. I have tubers in a couple different stages, and I will show you what I'm doing. I don't know that this is the right way or the wrong way. I've done some research. I've taken a couple online workshops, and I feel like I kind of know what I'm supposed to do, but I think there might be a little bit of room for interpretation, just like everything else with growing flowers. So the first step is taking your tuber and getting it started for propagating. So let's work on that first. For supplies for propagating, I have soil. This is just regular potting soil. I don't know that you need seed starting soil for this process, but today we're going to use potting soil. It worked for me on some of the other plants that I propagated, so that's what I have and that's what I'm going to use. I have containers that I'm going to be putting the tubers in. You can basically go as small of a container as the size of the tuber that you have. So for this tiny little tuber, I could even go for the smaller pot. I could probably get a 2-inch pot and put it in there. You could also use a 10-20 tray or a takeout tray, anything that will hold a little bit of soil. We're not going to use a ton of soil for this process, which is kind of nice. I need my tubers. I have masking tape today for my labels, and then a label, and then a garden marker. That's all you need. It's pretty simple. So the first thing I'm going to do is make my labels because that's easier to do when my hands are clean. I have two varieties here that I would like to propagate. One is Cornell Bronze, and the other is called Wind's Moonlight Sonata. This is kind of a fun yellow colored dahlia. I don't have a ton of yellow dahlias, so I thought it might be a good idea to see if I could get an extra plant or two started before the season begins. We'll see if these stick on here. Perfect. Okay, for propagating. On your dahlias, as a reminder, there are 3 parts. There's the body, which is kind of the potato-shaped thing, the bigger piece, the bulb, the body of it. This is where all the nutrients are stored. Then you have the neck, and that's usually the skinnier part after the body. And at the end of the neck is the crown. And this is what was attached to the mother plant last year. This was cut off to create a dahlia tuber for us. And the important thing on the crown is to find an eye. Now, this is only my 2nd year propagating or potting up dahlias. I am not super great at finding the eyes yet. These have now been sitting in my house for about a week, so the eyes are actually starting to emerge and become more obvious, so it's a little bit easier, but I'll be completely honest, when I opened the box, a lot of these I was like, I don't know, maybe it's there, I'm sure it's there, but I don't see it. So the eye will be a kind of a circular spot on the crown, and to me it almost looks like around the eye is a little bit circular. Sometimes it'll be a little bit enlarged or maybe slightly discolored or darker colored. Sometimes if you are ordering your dahlias, the eye is much more pronounced, or in this case, you actually have growth. So it's super easy to see if you have a viable eye or multiple. When propagating or potting up your dahlias, you want to place them on their side horizontally, and you want to place them with the eyes pointing up if you're able to figure out where the eyes are. If you can't tell, nature will take its course and it will likely just grow up anyway. So rest assured the dahlia knows what to do, but if you can give it a little bit of a boost and actually put the eyes pointing up, so you're going to put it in the pot like this, then you should be good to go. So for propagating, we don't need to worry about covering the dahlias completely. I just need a little bit of soil at the bottom, and I'm actually going to tilt the tuber a little diagonal so that the neck and the eye, the neck and the eye or the neck and the crown are a little bit above the surface, because I want to access that as it starts pushing growth. So I will show you what I mean. First we'll add a little bit of soil, not a ton. I probably have 1.5 inches in there. I'm going to set the tuber in here. This one's a little bit big for its container, but I think it'll be perfectly fine. You can see the end of it is butted up right against the edge of the container. It just has to put on a little bit of roots, not much. And then I'm going to add a little bit of soil around it so that the body is covered. And that's it. It's not even fully covered. You can see the neck is still exposed. And that's all you need to do. That's as simple as it is. For the next one, same thing. So for the Cornell bronze, all I'm going to do is put this one in here, and I'm going to cover the body up, and then I'm just going to put a little bit over the body. And actually this one doesn't sit up real well, so I did put it at just the slightest bit of an angle, maybe a 15-degree angle, so that the neck and the eye are still above the soil surface. And there, I'm done. I'm not going to water these. There's just the slightest bit of moisture in the soil. It won't even hold together. Whoops. It won't even hold together very well when you squeeze it. I won't water these unless they get extremely dry, but I will try to hold off watering them until they start to show some green growth coming out of the tuber. We put our tubers in the soil and started our propagation process. Now let's fast forward a few weeks. I would say it was about 3 weeks until I had enough growth on them that I could start thinking about propagating them. So 3, 4, 5 weeks is maybe my rough guesstimate. Go online. I'm sure it's online and they would know probably better than I do. So the next step is actually taking a cutting. And what we're going to need for that is a little bit different, but still pretty easy. We are again going to need potting soil. You're again going to need a container. You don't need a big container, and I could probably put 3 or 4 cuttings in here if I wanted to. You will need stuff to make labels. And you will need something to take your cutting, although that's actually optional too. So I'm going to use just a utility knife. One note is that it is highly advised that you disinfect and clean your knife before you do this, so that you are not going to spread disease if you use this on some other plant to a brand new baby plant, and that could just cause disease and issues down the road. So I did rub this down with some rubbing alcohol before we started this. So I mentioned that the knife or cutting utensil is optional, and there are others out there who know way more about this than I do, and one of the techniques that they use is actually to twist off the stem, and that's how they take their cutting. I haven't tried that yet, and I'm not brave enough to try it tonight, so that is something that you can do. Absolutely research it. I'm sure there's videos on YouTube that can show you how to do that. And then the last thing that I have is rooting hormone. I just got this year and have not used it enough to form an opinion about it. I will use it with one of my cuttings tonight just as kind of a little bit of a test, but I would say maybe half the videos or people that I have read their blogs or websites on use it, so I don't think it's necessary. If you have it, go ahead and use it. If you don't, you're not missing anything. I don't think it's going to affect it in a negative way. So basically what you are looking for, you can see I have a tray here and a little bit of a backstory. One of the dahlias that I loved last year, and I think it was probably my favorite or second favorite, was called Zingaro. And this was kind of a purplish with a little bit of white and a little bit of yellow. It wasn't very tall, maybe 3 feet tall, if I could guess. And it just, I don't know, for some reason it was one of those dahlias that, you know, it was the perfect shape and the great color combination for what I liked. I had it in our raised bed garden, and I wanted to, I wanted my overwintered tuber to work so that I could take cuttings and plant a kind of a hedge of it along our raised bed garden. Yeah, that tuber didn't make it. It was a complete shriveled stick by the time that I opened it up. So I found 2 packs of Zingaro dahlia at Walmart, and I snatched those up and I started propagating them. So I had 8 tubers that I started in soil the same way that we just started those other tubers, and this is how they're growing. So you can see that it works. It, you know, lets them get enough energy even with slightly less soil. And I have taken 5 cuttings so far. They are looking good. My hope is to have 14 plants. So I will probably take just a couple more just as an insurance net on this, and I will do one of them today just to show you how I'm doing it. I think it's pretty close to what other people are doing, and so far it's working. So what I'm looking for is a sprout or a shoot that has 3 sets of true leaves. So this first little leaf down here isn't what is a true leaf. It's just what emerges as soon as it gets growth. But these are the true leaves. So we have 1, 2, and then the third set is up here. And this is enough of a stem length that will allow roots to form off of where we're gonna make open wounds or where there are leaf joints coming into the stem. You want to have it to be somewhat established so that there's enough energy and growth, and these leaves are going to be pulling in enough light and moisture to support a brand new root system on this. So all I'm going to do is take my sharp knife, and you want it to be sharp. You don't want to be sawing away at this. You kind of want to make one clean cut. What I want to do is get my knife close enough to the bottom of the brand new shoot and take just the slightest sliver of the tuber with it. And that's where it's going to have a lot of the energy to create new roots. There's a little bit of varied opinion out there when you do some research whether you take some of the tuber or not. I have opted to join the camp of take a little slice of it. I'm not talking like a ton, just a paper thin slice of the actual tuber with it. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get my knife into a position here where I can get the tuber and just a shaving of the tuber to go along with it. Okay. Okay. Okay, so hopefully you can see that. It's just a teeny tiny, very thin amount of the tuber with it. So we have our cutting. The next thing I'm going to do is pull off the bottom sets of leaves. This plant is now going to be focused on growing new roots, and we definitely do not want it sending energy to any of these bottom leaves. It will have plenty of energy coming in through just the top leaves. So I've taken off the first leaves that emerge. I've taken off the first set of true leaves, and I'm going to take off one of the next leaves as well. If you want, you could take off this second true leaf here, and even just having two little leaves on top will be plenty. So now the plant is going to work on sending new roots out of this base. You know what? I didn't put soil in my pot, so we can do that real quick, not a problem. Put it in here. I will fill it up. And most of the time when I see people propagating their dahlias, they put the dahlia on the side of the container. I don't know if that's so that it helps start roots that go a certain direction and then the tuber will form in a direction like that. I don't actually know, but I will do it because why not? I'm going to make a little bit of a hole or a dibble with my marker here so I'm not pushing the bottom of the root into soil and injuring my new wound I made on it. And then I will just pack it in lightly and I will wish it luck. Again, the soil is slightly damp, so I'm not going to add water to it today. That's how you propagate. It's as easy as that. You put your tuber in a little bit of soil, you wait a few weeks, you chop off the new growth, you stick it back in soil, and you start the process again. Some of the places that grow dahlias to sell tubers in quantity, they suggest only taking like 10 to 13 cuttings off of one of your tuber, and then this tuber is done and spent. So I'm not going to get anywhere near that. I think I'll probably take 2 cuttings off of most of them, maybe 1 cutting. And I'm going to try and put these tubers out in the landscape. So this tuber already gave me 1 other cutting. I will probably take this as a cutting, and then I'll put the tuber out into the garden. Once you take a cutting, it's going to continue producing new growth through these eyes that it has up in the crown. So kind of a cool plant. If you've done propagating in the past, let me know how it went, or if you had certain varieties that worked better or worse. I would be really interested in hearing that. I am having a lot of fun doing this, and I can see how your dahlia collection can grow really quickly if you do this, which isn't a bad thing, but you're gonna need some friends to give these to. So thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you found it useful. If you did, please consider subscribing to our channel. It really means a lot to us, and that is probably the best way that you can support our channel. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for what we have coming next. Bye.